Hi there, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for this APMG International webinar today in partnership with OBM Dynamics. My name's Mark Constable, I'll be your host and moderator, and I'm delighted to be joined by guests Joost Kerkhoffs from OBM Dynamics and my colleague Ellie Barrett from APMG. And today we're talking about how we can improve performance using behavioural science, and in particular the practice of organisational behavioural management, or OBM for short. So a little bit about my guest today. So Joost is the co-founder and director of OBM Dynamics, and he brings a wealth of experience to the session today through years being involved in OBM and behavioural science research, education and promotion. And my colleague Ellie will be posing some various questions to Joost to get more information about it, and hopefully deliver some interesting information to our attendees today. Before I hand things over to Joost and Ellie, just allow me to cover a few bits of housekeeping for the session. So 4 points to look at very quickly. And the first is that we are recording the session, and everyone that's registered will receive a follow-up from me soon after we've got the recording available online. So do look out for the follow-up email, because there'll be some other bits of useful information in there. You're welcome to submit questions at any time. So using your GoToWebinar control panel, you should see an option where you can type in your questions, so feel free to do that at any point. I'll be keeping a close eye on the questions, and we'll hopefully address as many of those as we can towards the end. There are also a couple of handouts available via the GoToWebinar control panel, so you should see them in a handout section. But don't worry if you don't want to download during the session, we'll include those in the follow-up email as well. And last but not least, your feedback is very welcome, and it helps us with planning and delivering webinars in the future. So feel free to send any feedback to me, probably best by email, and you'll have my email address via the reminder emails and also the follow-up email that you'll receive in due course. So I think that's everything set. So at this point, I'll hand things over to Joost and Ellie. I think we'll go to Ellie first. So Ellie, over to you.
Thanks, Mark. So great to be here with you today, Joost. And personally, I've always found the subject of human behaviour really interesting. The idea that you can influence behaviour to create a desired outcome, to me, is really, really fascinating. So to start today's conversation, can you tell us a little bit about OBM, how it originated, and what it entails?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me and the opportunity to tell something about OBM. Well, as Mark rightfully mentioned, OBM is short for Organizational Behavior Management, and it is a part of management science. It's actually a scientifically proven method. It's validated for optimizing organizational performance. And we're combining a 7-step protocol. So that's the management part with behavioral science, really, but science that's turned into hard data, because we will be measuring behavior in interventions with OBM. And from there, we focus on positive change of behaviors in order to create productive habits. And it's not well known in Western Europe. I tend to call it one of the best kept secrets in management and consulting. I've only learned about it like 12 years ago, and yeah, I have a background, a master's degree in organizational science back in the 90s already, but for some reason this was left out. So I was kind of dazed and confused, but also delighted that I learned about OBM in 2009. And I've been specializing myself in this field ever since. And well, where does it come from, really? You ask. Well, it's actually the application of the science of applied behavior analysis, but then in organizations. As you may know, ABA is primarily used for helping people to deal with mental issues, anxieties, and phobia, things like that. But it also works quite well to help people with autism, and this part of ABA is more well known in Western Europe. And OBM is really the application of these principles to management science and to organizations. It's well established in North America, both ABA and OBM. ABA is part of applied psychology, and you can study it just as you can study cognitive psychology. You can also choose to study ABA. It's taught at many colleges and universities. Few less of them will also teach OBM, but you can obtain a master's degree in ABA or OBM in North America. So how did it go from the field of ABA to OBM? Well, some clinical psychologists, for instance, the Dr. Aubrey C. Daniels, who's actually one of my heroes. He started out as a clinical psychologist, and he thought, well, it really works to help people to function in society again once they dropped out for some reason. And he thought, well, it might just work also on normally, well, otherwise mentally healthy people, so to speak, and in order to make them more productive. And that's what he started to test with the help of a few befriended entrepreneurs who were really interested in what he was doing, and they were just joking about it for some time, saying, well, we also have some people with disorders working for us because they don't listen and they do what they're told. So it was kind of a joke, but Aubrey Daniels really was fascinated by the thought of, hey, might this just work? And it actually did. So that's one of the starting points. He's one of the people who founded, laid the groundwork for OBM, so to speak. He actually helped found the scientific journal of OBM in 1977. And that's where it really began. But really, the real foundations for behavioral science are much older. They date back as much as a century already. It's like 100 years. So what does OBM entail? Well, we focus on optimizing performances, and we do it by bringing out the best in people, and they start doing things because they want to perform instead of having to. Being told is one thing and being under pressure is another, but we see, and we also record the data, that once people start doing things because they want to, then much more will come from that, and good things, hopefully, but that's a matter of perspective, really. So what we do is we start with defining what we really want, and that's both in terms of results from the organizational perspective, but also in terms of behaviors. What behaviors are needed to get the results? And yeah, well, maybe I can use a slide to point that out. Do I have control here for the? Yeah. So let me see if I can start this. Oh yeah, right. Show my screen. So can you see this?
We can, yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we're talking about behaviors, but before we start diving into behaviors, we want to know what the results are that you want in a specific context, the organizational context. But this context can change and even differ per department. So if you want results just totally, then you really have to think, okay, but what does this entail for specific departments? Because to be part of a bigger result and to do stuff that contributes to getting there really differs from role to role, right? I mean, somebody in production really has different things to do than a person at the financial department or in a warehouse. So we need to define the behaviors that are needed to get the results, and then we start figuring out how to increase those needed behaviors in terms of frequency, timeliness, quality, really to get better results. And we do it by applying the power of positive reinforcement. And this is key. And mind you, all this I'm telling is how do you say, it's a great difference, I think, with other approaches where the focus is on results only.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't know if you encountered the same, but I even heard some managers say that they don't care how it's done, as long as they can put a check mark in an Excel file or on a dashboard. And okay, those people are aiming for the results only. Well, I can tell you that they operate on a slippery slope, Ellie, because if you don't care how it's done, and when there is enough pressure put on people, or there is a perverse reward linked to it, then people become very, very creative in attaining those results. You can count on that, but they become quite creative in getting there, and mostly with a minimum of effort, and even doing things that are illegal or unethical or downright dangerous. And in the long term, that this can really hurt your business. And so we have to watch out to just only steer by results and manage results only, instead of wondering how those results are coming about. So yeah, it's important to focus on behaviors.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I think a lot of people consider sort of human behavior to be sort of much more about the softer skills. So the idea that you can sort of consider the results that you want and then measure people's behaviors to lead to a better result is really interesting for me. So what are the key benefits then of effective OBM for the organization and for the individual?
Well, as you say, we measure, and because behavior is made measurable, it's an evidence-based method, with which you can demonstrably and measurably improve performances in terms of frequency, volume, timeliness, quality, etc. And yeah, we tend to start with questions like, how do we get people to do X? And X is then the behavior you want. How do we get them to do X more or better or faster, etc., etc.? And once you have a good specification or a pinpoint, we also call it, and you start applying the intervention parts, I'll talk about those in a bit. Yeah, we actually see astonishing results when it's applied properly. And the benefit of being trained in the use of OBM is that at least you become more aware of all the pitfalls surrounding behavioral change, as you may have encountered yourself already. I know I have before I encountered OBM, but yeah, now at least I know why I'm failing, because I know about the pitfalls. But knowing about these, you can avoid them, and you can start shaping yourself, your own behaviors in applying the right strategies, and you can immensely improve the effectiveness of your time spent on behavior change and bringing out the best in people. Because we notice that a lot of people fall into pitfalls, and we have this actual this exercise, and I've been doing it for quite a while, for 11 or 12 years already, and we ask how people want to bring about a certain change. And in this exercise, unfortunately we can't do it right here, but you see from this exercise that they tend to think in the wrong direction, and because of that they step into certain pitfalls. And of course these pitfalls are explained in our trainings, but yeah, it's really a great way to become more aware of your own influence and how to increase it. And actually, therefore, also a great way to change habits and routines in the workplace once you know what the best interventions are to implement.
Yeah, I can see that. I think as you say, knowing where you might necessarily be going wrong is a really good place to start to change your own behavior and then be able to influence the behavior of others. It also must be really satisfying for people to be able to see how the changing behavior is improving the team performance by sort of measuring the data. We all like to see things moving in the right direction, and the results coming in a measured way really must sort of boost motivation for people leading the teams and also the teams themselves. Can you tell us a bit about how OBM is actually applied? What's involved in sort of the application of OBM in the organization?
Yeah, sure. To be able to see these improvements, well, one thing is measuring. So that's part of our protocol, just as giving feedback is part of this protocol. So we use a 7-step protocol, and I will just see if I can get a picture of it and walk you through these steps. Well, at least for a bit. I mean, I'm not giving a whole lecture here because that's obviously the part of the training, but to give you some sense of what's coming to you when you decide to join such a training. So let me see if I can get this on screen.
Sure. Just while you find that, Joost, I'll just remind our audience today that if you have a question for Joost that you'd like us to pick up, please do type it in the chat. We will be coming to audience questions at the end. So if you have a burning question on how to influence behavior and improve your team's performance, or a problem you might be struggling with, please pop it in the chat and we'll come to you at the end.
So here it is. This is the actual management science part. I mean, we have this behavioral science part and even neuroscience part, but this protocol is really the management science part we use to make a plan and really define and design interventions. So as I always tell to my students, these are really the chapters of your program, of your plan. So we also call it a performance improvement plan, a PIP for short. And it all starts by specifying the performance in terms of both the desired results and the desired behaviors of attaining those results, and them being legal behaviors, obviously, ethical and safe behaviors. Let's not forget about that, because just as an example, I encounter many organizations that struggle with KPIs that actually create friction between them. And then very well known is production versus safety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've worked with construction companies, also in large construction sites where they're building a bridge, for instance. And I always say, well, the bridge will be there. That's not the question, but how? How is it built? And it also really touches on an ethical part of it, because I don't know if you've heard about the World Championship of soccer that's coming up somewhere in the Middle East. All these stadiums, they will be there.
Yeah.
But how were they built? Under what conditions? With what behaviors? And then we heard these discomforting noises about okay, someone died. Well, it's not one, it's hundreds of people that have died already just building this stadium. So for me personally, this is a very important part of OBM, to figure out a way to get things done, but well, to have everybody flourish and everybody benefit from it. So the first step in that is to take your business case and the real reason why you want things to change, and start thinking along the lines I just mentioned, of translating really the desired results also into the desired behaviors. And once you've done that, then and only after that you can take step 2, and then you can really start measuring the performance. You can start with results, that's fine, but please realize and know that there are behaviors needed to get to those results. And well, you might find out that the results are met with the wrong behaviors, and you should dive a little deeper and really touch on those behaviors and change them to become desired behaviors.
Yeah, I think that it's even more important. I mean, it's becoming more and more important, isn't it? The values of the organization are reflected in the way they produce their products or they produce their services. And I think even customers these days are buying more into the values and the behaviors of the organization, as well as, you know, the results and the products that they produce. You know, many more organizations now publishing the values, you know, on their websites and on social media and things, and even in some sort of commercial situations on the packaging of their products. You know,
yes, even there, yeah.
Created.
And that's actually one of the pitfalls I mentioned earlier. That one of those is that, okay, although you can mention your values everywhere, it doesn't necessarily mean that people start acting accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes they don't even realize what the needed or the desired behaviors are. They just do something because they hope that it will contribute. And if you don't have a clue as a leader, then don't expect others to have that clue for you. In fact, you can have multiple interpretations of the same concept. Mm-hmm. Of a value. I mean, what is a value? And it's just an abstract concept often, and you can interpret it. So we need to talk about the interpretation and if it's the right interpretation.
Yeah.
So, and this is this is key. It's also the most difficult part. But please, yeah, keep in mind that these steps need to be taken in this order. Otherwise, yeah, it makes no sense to take the next step. Because once you start measuring, you record data, and you can have a baseline measurement of how well you are doing right now. And once you have a baseline, you can compare it to where you want to be. So you have 2 data points really. with a desired state and a current state, and then you can look at the gap. And how do you really explain that there is a gap? Well, that's where step 3 comes in with the ABC analysis of performance. ABC analysis is really the beating heart of the OBM approach, where we have this, well, you can call it a root cause analysis tool of behavior. So why are people doing things, and why are they doing it the way they do it? There are reasons for that, and well, in our trainings we learn how to apply such analysis, and also how to draw the right conclusions from that in order really to explain why you have the outcome of your baseline. Why is it not 100%? Why do only 27% of people wear mouth caps in a certain area at the production line? So, and yeah, you can measure that, but you need still to explain why it happened, and that's what step 3 is for. And once you've done those first 3 steps, you can really turn to designing your interventions, because once you know why things are happening, you can start intervening on the context. So that was the previous picture where it's with the cloud. It's really the environment that we want to optimize and change to best influence behavior. So we're not going to attach wires to you and reset your brain or anything. No, we use the basic principles really from behavioral science to really figure out how to best set up the environment for getting and attaining the best behaviors and best results. And if we're going in the right direction, that's really the question to ask here. But once you start measuring and you start applying steps 4, 5, and 6, then you can see things happening, because step 4 is about really giving performance feedback, often in a graphic sense, with graphs, on how people are doing. So not keep the data to yourself, but really show and tell, okay, this is what we measured, this is how you are performing right now as a group. So OBM is really focused on group performance, and it can be individuals, and we often use it on individuals, but you don't disclose, obviously disclose individual performance data with the group, right? So that it's a little privacy issue there. But yeah, there's no reason to, because it's the group performance that we want to increase. And yeah, we use all kinds of graphical feedback. And I remember one of my students was actually a Dutch consultant, but she had a project in the UK at a production site in how do you say that, in a plant, and she found out that a lot of these operators, they liked Formula 1 racing, and actually I believe that the site was near the Silverstone circuit, and she really used that knowledge to give back the feedback. So she had a big poster made of the map of the Silverstone racing circuit, and she used that to plot where they were on the performance. So once you were all the way make one lap, then the performance was 100%. And she also used step 5 with the sub goals on how to close those the big gap by taking smaller steps and having a sub goal at a certain band and just plotting it there, so people saw that they were approaching that first milestone really, but it was just graphed in a way that was really attractive for them, and they got quite enthusiastic about it and just wanted to perform better, to be able to put that little figure a few steps further along the road.
Yeah, I mean, I can see sort of how relating the performance and the progress to the team and their interests, you know, really makes a difference for people wanting to buy in. That particular example would probably go down really well with Mark, our host today, but the Formula One. But yeah, it makes total sense, doesn't it? If you relate it to the people that are, you know, doing the work and something that makes sense to them and interests them, then it makes them want to take part and become more involved.
We even have an example of a department where like 80% of them liked to play darts, and the manager just, and also one of our students, he just thought, hey, I can use this to make it into an attractive graphical representation of the data, and also to actually link the 6th step to that performance, because once you get to a milestone and once you start seeing people behave in the right way, you can actually link positive reinforcement to it, and that's more than giving a bonus or a bottle of wine. Positive reinforcement is really about increasing the probability that behavior will be repeated and turned into a good habit.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think that just giving a bottle of wine is good enough, or just giving a bonus is good enough for the result. But you really have to focus on reinforcing the right behaviors by also really appreciating what people are doing, and they are struggling just as much as we are struggling once we want to do something in another way than we are used to. And I often use this small exercise as an example where I ask people to fold their arms, and they just do it the way they are used to, and you are doing it, and then I say, okay, well, imagine that this is something that should also be done in a company, and you have done it always like this, but then some consultant says, well, you're doing it all wrong, and from now on we are going to do it the other way around. So if you would please do it the other way around from now on, and then the company will save a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Well, it's a routine that you're breaking up, and you're confused. So we must accept the fact that once you start introducing things like, okay, we want to do it the agile way, or lean, or we want to do project management in another way than you are used to, then you are really touching people on their routines. And it is these routines that they are quite fond of, actually, because they do it automatically. They don't have to think about it. And I saw you struggle, Ellie.
I did.
Yeah. So it's mentally, it will cost you more energy to do it the other way around.
Yeah, and of course slow down your productivity, because you have to think about doing it until it becomes a habit in the new way. And as you say, it's so easy to switch back to what you're used to.
And people revert back to old ways. So once the consultant is gone and management turns to another flavor of the month, and it's not really ingrained really as a new habit, as a routine, but just people do it because they are asked or even forced, then, well, obviously, once the pressure is gone, you go back to what you call normal, right? So it's reverting back to the old average, so to speak.
Yeah, I think
sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think the idea of understanding the purpose of it as well is really important for the individual, because like you say, if it's just something that you're told to do and there's no explanation of why or what benefit it's bringing, and there's no positive reinforcement, then you're reliant on the individual to continue to carry on that change, you know, without an understanding of what benefit it's bringing, then, you know, it's very unlikely to succeed.
It really is about thinking in terms of how can others benefit when they start acting in a certain way. And it involves the use of dopamine, the dopamine effects. Dopamine is called the do it again hormone. It's really good stuff once you experience a dopamine kick, but it actually helps your brain to realize and remember in another setting that is comparable, that okay, I did it like that and it was successful. If I do it like this again, I may as well be successful again, and get that same feeling from it again. So it's really an addictive hormone, and that's why we are repeating our behavior, because we want to experience it again.
Yeah, and the addictive dopamine rush, I can identify that, you know, with hundreds of things in your personal life. I mean, we're at the beginning of the year and everyone's had health kick New Year's resolutions and things. And you have the delightful thing on your smartwatch which tells you how many steps you've done during the day. And if you reach that certain goal, you know, it closes a target ring or it buzzes or something. And, you know, you don't really get anything from it apart from, you know, the good feeling of I did that today. And the bad feeling maybe the next day when you haven't achieved it, that makes you want to get up off the sofa and do those last few steps. So, you know, exactly. That goal setting and positive reinforcement totally makes sense to me.
So if done properly and enough, this may well turn these productive behaviors into good new habits. It will help people do things because they want to, because of that certain feeling. Mm-hmm. And of course, this cannot be applied as some magic trick. You will still need to do some hard work as an influencer, but at least you will become more effective in the application of your valuable time to influence other people's performances once you start knowing about all these actions and pitfalls.
Yeah. Joost, can you share with us some examples of sort of successful OBM application and the outcomes that it has already delivered for people?
Well, there are many, literally hundreds of cases, case studies from across the globe, and of course it all started in America as usual, but they have some clever people there. You can't say anything about that. But well, one of the first cases that was well documented and also published was the case of Emery Air Freight, which is actually the predecessor of FedEx in the late 60s. And there was an OBM program brought to that company by Mr. Feeney, who saw some. He did some workshops at Michigan University, and he used it to increase sales performance. So that resulted in an estimated increase in profits of some $3 million, which was quite a respectable amount of money in those days, and even still.
Yeah, I would argue that's still a respectable amount of money.
Yeah, for an individual, sure, but I don't know how many billions of revenue they are making now, but still, in that respect, it was a healthy increase in profits, and so that was quite a famous case, and many followed, and like about 11 years ago, I joined VU University in Amsterdam, and I set up a postgraduate training program on OBM there. Those were my first experiences. And at the university, we also started collecting case stories. And in the Netherlands alone, already over 250 of those cases have been documented by the university, ranging from improving productivity, increasing sales, increasing safety, quality, customer service, etc., etc. And concrete examples are improving on the correct use of software tools or any tools. We've seen many cases of that. The use of personal protective equipment, having people follow procedures, finish reports on time, hand them in on time, and correct and complete that kind of stuff. But also from lean perspective, generate and implement more ideas in order to create a Kaizen culture. And well, it all depends on the scope, of course, but yeah, several of these have reported savings or extra revenue by tens of thousands to even several hundreds of thousands of euros. But besides the money, it's something that can also save lives, actually. A well-known example is that of hand washing by medical staff. There are several cases that had that specification, but one is well known, and it's about medical staff entering and leaving a patient's room, and procedure dictates that they clean their hands before they enter and after they leave. And even though they knew this had to be done, and they were being filmed actually, only 10% of medical staff did that on average. And after the intervention, where we used also graphical feedback with an electronic board that showed them how well they were doing, also comparing it to the running average and stuff like that, it rose to an average of 90%. So it's a 90. So this is the kind of improvements that you can expect, and scientific studies have shown performance increases by a factor of 4 to even 60. There was a report of a few reports of improvements by a factor of 60. Yeah. And admittedly, those are often examples of relatively small cases at team level, but the application can be broader to the extent that it actually helps to effectively change the culture of a whole organization. Companies like 3M, AT&T, Honeywell, Bayer, Heineken, they have been using OBM for years now to increase performances at all kinds of levels worldwide. Bayer, for instance, reported a decrease in safety incidents and injuries of over 50%. This is 50% in their global safety program.
Wow.
In just a few years, I think 2 or 3 years, I believe. So imagine the effect on employee health, well-being, and of course also the company's bottom line. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's all kinds of sides to this story. Yeah. And yeah, as a trainer and consultant, I'm currently also involved in a similar global safety culture program at Friesland Campina, which is the second largest dairy company in the world, right after Danone from France. Friesland Campina employs over 24,000 people, producing dozens of products in 30 countries and shipping them over to 100 countries worldwide. So this is a global company, and we're just in the middle, like 2 years of a 5-year program right now, in which we implement a trainer-trainer concept to help spread the knowledge from within the company itself. So it's not only external trainers, but we teach how it's done to a few people. And in this example, it's over 100 people that have been trained over the last 2 years. And they are really now linked to helping on site with safety projects and trying to turn a bad habit into a good habit. And yeah, depending on the baseline, this status can be reached after a few months. But in the end, you need the whole team to be on 100% level of safe habits for 15 consecutive working days. And it can be about many things, like putting on personal equipment, protective equipment, like safety goggles, but also locking out and tagging out machines before you start doing maintenance. And it sounds silly, maybe, but don't underestimate human foolishness in trying to do something in a running machine. So yeah, that's why people lose limbs and everything, because they are not turning the machine off before they start fixing it.
Yeah.
So you can't imagine, but it's happening. And well, then of course we use this ABC analysis to figure out why in the heck that this person did this, and we can also start turning it around by using the 7-step protocol.
Yeah.
So those are a few examples.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thank you. And obviously, OBM is a well proven approach, and it seems to me can be applied to situations where it's not only about performance improvement and increasing profit, but also, as you say, about influencing behavior where a change is needed for new protocols. You know, we've all been through huge amounts of change in protocol in our own organizations in the last 2 years with all of the extra safety protocols we've had to go through. And it has been a case of encouraging people to take responsibility for their own behavior and applying that positive reinforcement to make sure that it happens. Would you say, Joost, that there are any particular industries or scenarios where OBM is most effective, or is it more sort of universally applicable?
I think it can be applied universally because of the principles on which the method is based. It's universally applicable because it has to do with the very way that we as humans act and why we do things. And of course, there are cultural differences around the world, even between parts of countries, even between departments. But the basic laws of behavior, as discovered by people like Watson and Thorndike and Harvard professor Skinner, apply to almost all organisms on this planet, including humans. So yeah, and recent discoveries in neuroscience only seem to confirm these old theories. And you know what the funny and interesting part is that we already know that it works as human beings. And funny enough, a lot of industries already use this science to influence our behaviors as consumers, as you just mentioned yourself with your sports watch. And yeah, actually, it's been decades already that we've been influenced this way by owners of casinos, by owners of social media, online games, to name a few. And well, we already know that it works. And it's my vision that in a few years, and with proper training, we'll we will be able to transform the way we lead people and get the best performance out of them in the workplace using these same principles, at least when they are applied in an ethical way, and yeah, get the best out of people because they have the feeling that they want to themselves. And yeah, well, it may sound a bit cheesy, or I don't know, but I see it as my mission to turn this world into a better workplace, and by applying the power of positive reinforcement, really.
It's not a bad mission at all.
No, well, and you ask, are there any constraints? Sure. It only works optimal when influencers at all levels are involved. So it may turn out that you first need to change your own behavior or other leaders' behaviors before you can start applying it on operators, people on the shop floor. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just like in any other change program, it's also about stakeholder management and seeing who needs to behave in a certain way. And maybe you find out that in order to change one thing, you first need to change the behavior of other persons first. Yeah. So yeah, that can be a constraint, especially if you say, well, I'm only focusing on my department and I only have the money for my department. And yeah, if you find out that you want to change something and you need an investment to be done to change the actual environment, yeah, and the investment is turned down, then well, you can't do it. Yeah. So of course there are all kinds of constraints, but yeah, once you really start applying it, at least in your own circle of influence, then you can see things happening. Yeah, I really believe that.
Yeah, I mean, this is all, it's really fascinating, and I feel like we could talk for another hour just to, even about the
time's ticking, isn't it?
But I want to make sure that the attendees get an idea of what they can do next. So can you give us a bit of an idea about sort of how managers and leaders can find out more and build their capability in OBM?
Sure. And as Mark has mentioned, there are files available with more information and documentation. And in order to build capability, we offer training and certification. Well, the last bit is your part, of course, APMG's part. And all delegates start with a so-called foundation training. And after that, you can also become a practitioner by actually doing a practice project. And yeah, maybe you've heard of Lean Six Sigma, where you can get a Lean black belt certification. It's kind of the same thing, where you really apply the theory to practice and you prove that you've done well, and to prove your actual capabilities. And of course, this is all based on the protocol. I'm still showing it, I guess.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. And also with a coach. The coach will help you apply it. And there's also software that is specially designed for recording a performance improvement plan and really help you along the way. But that's the practitioner part. It all starts with the OBM foundation level training, of course.
Okay. Thank you, Joost. I'm conscious of time, so I want to make sure that we have somewhere for the candidates to go next if they're interested in learning more. So really, for further information about the training, the certification, and more information on the case studies that Joost has mentioned today, if you head on over to APMG International and search for OBM, you'll be able to find more information on that. So it's been really, really interesting today. I'm just going to ask Mark if we've got any questions from today's attendees that we'd like to cover in the last few minutes.
Yep, we sure have, Ellie. We are getting close to the hour, so I'll just pick out a couple for us. So first one, you talked a bit about constraint shows, so this one's somewhat related, I think. So what unintended consequences does this approach produce?
Unintended.
Unintended consequences.
Yeah, well, there are many. Yeah. So that's why you really need to figure out what the whole picture is of antecedents in the environment that get you going, and also of all the consequences that may follow on behavior. And indeed, you can ruin things as an influencer by applying the wrong consequences to certain behaviors, and then it gets messy even. So yeah, that's why we use this ABC analysis tool to really get the whole picture of all the consequences that are influencing behaviors, both the positive and the negative consequence, and also the unintended consequences that are applied by other people.
Great. Thanks, host. And there's two questions that are sort of related to each other, so I'll do them one after the other. In my experience, people are not familiar or comfortable with having their behaviour observed and measured, e.g. time and task analysis has been difficult to conduct. People tend to focus on process, not on their behaviour as part of that process. So how can managers introduce this approach into organisational culture and practice? And the second one, which relates to that, is when people are measured, they change their behaviour. How do you deal with that?
Well, the fair questions that we also deal with in the training, but just to give a small glimpse of the things I'm thinking of, it really also is about what you expect next. So a lot of people hate to be measured on their behaviors, because in the past, being measured meant being punished. So we have this history built up in our brain, and it's called conditioning, that we associate measurement with, oh, I better brace myself because here it comes. Once you start introducing only positive consequences once desired behaviors are shown, then people get less suspicious, because then you have the reinforcement as a good consequence and not as an antecedent for, ooh, here comes trouble. So that's just one part of the answer, but of course, yeah, in the training we will really dive into that as well. But yeah, there's no time left for now, so unfortunately. So
yeah, thanks so much, Joost. And yeah, we are very close to the hour, so we'll start to wrap up there. You should see a few links on screen now where you can go to the APMG website to find out more about the OBM Foundation training and certification that Joost has mentioned, and also link there to the OBM Dynamics website, where you can find out a lot more about what the guys there do and the services they offer.
Yeah, if I may just tell one thing. OBM Dynamics is really, we're not a training provider. I mean, that's why we partnered up with you to introduce our scheme to ATOs that deliver our training to companies that part of the audience is working for. So I will be the one training the instructors, and they will help you get the training and certification. Yeah.
Thanks, Joost. And this is the white paper I mentioned at the start of the session, actually, and we'll include that in the follow-up email, so do look out for that. As soon as we've got the recording available online, we'll get that out to you. So that just leaves me to wrap up and thank everyone for joining us today. Very much appreciate you taking time out of schedules to join us, and thank you, Joost and Ellie, for your contributions today. Really interesting stuff. I hope it's been interesting for the audience. So thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your week, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.